My name is James Ellis, and I've spent the past 7 years building a life with Lucia. On the surface, we had everything: a beautiful home, stable careers, and an enviable marriage. People often called us the perfect couple. Lucia, who went by Lucia Whitmore at work, was a rising star in the marketing world. As for me, I managed operations for a tech firm, a position that allowed me the stability and financial freedom to provide for us both. Life was comfortable, predictable even. But lately, something had started to feel off. Little things had started to change. Though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it all began, Lucia had become more distant, quieter. And I found myself spending more late nights at work, a routine that both of us had fallen into. Our conversations grew shorter, and the energy that once flowed between us seemed to have evaporated. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone has their moments, right? But then Lucia's college friend Sarah came to town. I didn't think much of it either. After all, Sarah had always been part of our circle. They'd known each other for years, and I had no reason to doubt their friendship. That night I was in the office sorting through some reports when I overheard Lucia and Sarah talking in the living room. Their voices were faint but distinct, and something in their tone made me stop. It wasn't the usual catching up. There was an undercurrent of something else. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help it. Curiosity got the better of me. "You know, James is great, but I feel like I'm losing him," Lucia was saying, her voice tight with frustration. "He's always busy, always working. I don't even know who he is anymore." Sarah's voice cut through, calm yet probing. "You're really starting to feel that way?" Lucia sighed, a deep exhale that spoke volumes. "Yes. We're living in the same house, but it feels like we're strangers. I don't know how to talk to him anymore, Sarah. He's always been so absorbed in his work, and I've tried to keep it together, but..." "But what?" Sarah asked gently. Lucia paused before answering. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just a part of the background, a wife, a role to play. I need more than that." The words hung in the air, a punch to the gut I hadn't seen coming. More than that? Was she saying that she was unhappy with our marriage? My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to march into the living room and demand answers, but I stayed frozen in place, not trusting myself to speak. "Are you sure you're not reading too much into it?" Sarah asked, sounding concerned but still unsure. "No," Lucia replied, her voice tinged with something darker now. "I feel it. Something's missing. I don't know if it's me or him or both. Maybe it's just that we've been stuck in the same routine for too long." I couldn't take it anymore. I stood, my legs shaky, and moved closer to the door to hear better. But I didn't expect what came next. "And then there's Mark," Lucia said quietly, almost as if she regretted it the moment it left her lips. "Mark?" My mind instantly went into overdrive. Mark was a colleague of Lucia's, a man I had always considered a friend. He worked in a different department, but we had crossed paths numerous times, shared drinks after work, and even exchanged a few friendly conversations. To hear Lucia mention his name in this context made my stomach turn. "What about Mark?" Sarah asked, her voice a little too curious for my liking. "He's been around, helping me with projects, listening to me. It's just nice to have someone who's there when I need to talk," Lucia said, almost defensively. I felt a sharp pang of jealousy, one I hadn't expected. I'd always known that Lucia had colleagues she was close with, but this was different. There was an intimacy in her voice, a vulnerability that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "Does James know?" Sarah asked, and I could hear the edge of caution in her voice. "No," Lucia replied quickly, almost too quickly. "And I don't think he would understand. It's nothing, I swear. He just doesn't listen anymore." I leaned against the door, my heart hammering in my chest. What was going on between them? Was there something more to her relationship with Mark? I couldn't be sure, but the way Lucia talked about him, the way she kept justifying their interactions, made it sound like there was something more than just friendship. My thoughts began to spiral. Was Lucia having an affair? Was she emotionally involved with Mark? But the conversation didn't end there. Lucia's voice dropped lower, barely a whisper now. And sometimes, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, you know? If I'm just holding on to something that isn't really there anymore. What the hell was that supposed to mean? My hands balled into fists. She was talking about me, about our marriage, as if it were something to be discarded. My breath hitched in my chest. I couldn't hear anymore. I had to know the truth. I waited until they were both asleep that night before I approached Lucia. My mind was racing with a million thoughts, and the silence in the house felt suffocating. I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to hear the truth. The next morning I decided to talk to her. The tension between us was unbearable, and I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. I sat Lucia down in the living room, trying to steady my breath. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy. "Lucia," I began, my voice shaking slightly. "I overheard part of your conversation with Sarah last night. You said something that really worried me. About you and Mark." Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a split second I saw fear flash across her face. She opened her mouth to speak but quickly closed it, looking down at her hands. I pressed on, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are you seeing him, Lucia? Are you having an affair with him?" I asked, my voice betraying the raw emotion I had been hiding all this time. Her expression faltered for a moment, and she glanced away, unable to meet my gaze. I could feel the weight of her silence crushing me. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you, James," she said, her voice trembling. "But yes, there's been something. It's not just Mark. There's been more." My stomach dropped. "More? What do you mean, more?" Lucia's face crumpled. "I've been meeting him. Outside of work. We've been talking, getting closer. I never meant for it to go this far, but I don't know how to stop it anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind reeled, and I could feel the floor beneath me start to tilt. Mark, my friend. I had never suspected a thing. All this time, while I was busting my ass at work, Lucia had been turning to someone else. "I didn't want to hurt you," Lucia repeated, her voice breaking. "I thought I was just trying to fix something that was broken between us. I didn't know how to talk to you about it." Tears stung my eyes, but I couldn't let them fall. Not yet. I stood up, unable to stay still, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I just couldn't find the words. I had trusted her, I had loved her, and she had betrayed me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "What do you want from me, Lucia?" I asked, the words coming out cold, distant. "What do we do now?" Lucia looked up, her face a mask of regret and guilt. "I don't know," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this." There was a long silence between us. In that moment, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The life we had built together, the trust I had placed in her, had crumbled in an instant. "I need time to think," I said, my voice low. "I need space." She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I turned and walked out, knowing that things would never be the same again.